Hey guys, Mason here. And who is C.G. Jung? And better yet, why is he famous? What has he done that's so special? Well, the short answer would be that Carl Gustav Jung was a psychiatrist who largely contributed to the fields of psychology and psychoanalysis, and is largely known for his proposal and creation of such concepts as the collective unconscious, the anima and animus, archetypes, psychological types, the complex, and synchronicity. During this time, he was also able to add on to the currently existing knowledge of symbolization and dream analysis. Whew. He was a busy man. It would be a shame if that's all you got to see of him and the video just ended right in mid. Today's your lucky day. I'm going to go much more in depth on Jung's importance and contributions to the field of psychology. Now let's get started with Jung himself. Actually, not quite his whole self, but just his hair. What does this have to do with Jung's contributions to psychology? Let's take a closer look. One of the biggest areas of study for Jung was his interest in the collective unconsciousness. The idea that all humans are psychologically connected through an unconscious channel of our mind that also has stood the test of time and goes all the way back to our ancestors. So upon learning more about this, I came across many graphics and visualizations of this idea of the collective unconsciousness, when one, all of a sudden, popped into my head, or rather, out of it. I found that it would be very helpful in remembering the abstract idea of the collective unconsciousness to compare to something we're all very familiar with, our hair. To be more specific, I mean the actual hair follicle. The hair follicle gives us our identity, separating us from being like the others, with its many possible lengths, colors, styles. There's just so many combinations, almost as many as there are individual people. As a matter of fact, it's exactly like how our individual consciousnesses, or as Jung called it, our egos, makes us all different people, all seemingly psychologically disconnected, like hair does on the surface. Following Jung's theory farther into the recesses of the mind will yield you his idea of, in addition to our already conscious mind, that we also have a personal unconscious, the part of our mind that we can't willingly access or tap into. It's well known for housing suppressed memories, oppressed problems, and home to the complex. But more on that later. Like I said, it's the content of our mind that has been shoved back, forgotten over time, buried under the surface, just like the roots of our hair follicles. However, Jung did not stop here. He created the concept of the aforementioned collective unconsciousness, where there exists an entire unconscious vault of knowledge, experiences, ideas, and memories that we cannot consciously access. This theory would mean that we, who believe we are all individual humans with separate minds, are actually all connected to each other, unknowingly, unconsciously. Just like how each individual hair has no clue it shares the commonality that is the entire human epidermis. It really is a shame that we can't access any of the cool and crazy contents that exist in our unconscious. Or can we? Jung believed that dreams were specific expressions of the unconscious which have a definite purposeful structure, indicating an underlying idea or intention, and that their general function is to restore one to a total psychic equilibrium, compensating for and sometimes illustrating the complexes that face us. For example, the 19th century German chemist Kekulé, researching into the molecular structure of benzene, dreamed of a snake with its tail in its mouth. He interpreted that dream to mean that the structure was a closed carbon ring, which actually turned out to be scientifically true. That's interesting. The next concept of Jung's was going to involve dreams. Must have been a coincidence. Or was it synchronicity? Jung described synchronicity as the occurrence of two events that are not linked casually, nor teleologically, similar to destiny and fate, yet are meaningfully related. Once, Jung had a client who was describing a dream involving a scarab beetle, when at that very instant he was telling him the dream, a very similar beetle flew in through the window. Often, People dream about something like the death of a loved one and find the next morning that their loved one did, in fact, die at about the same time. It's like you picking up the phone to call your friend to find out they are already on the line calling you. Most psychologists would call these things coincidences, but if we believe Jung's theory of the collective unconscious, then it makes perfect sense. We're all connected unconsciously, with one of the portals to the collective unconscious being dreams. What exactly are we all sharing in our collective mind? What's going on up here? Well, Jung examined this also and called the contents of our collective unconsciousness archetypes. They're relatively abstract and not actual biological things like Freud's instincts, but more spiritual and unconscious demands. There are many common archetypes that are very recognizable, but not necessarily traceable, leading to Jung's theory that we are all born from unknown access to these through a collective unconsciousness. One of the best places to start to realize the significance of archetypes is with the mother archetype. All of our ancestors have had mothers. We have evolved in an environment that included a mother or mother figure who would never have survived without our connection to a nurturing one during our times as helpless infants. It stands to reason that we are built in a way that reflects our evolutionary environment. We come into the world ready to want a mother, to seek her, to recognize her, to love her. So the mother archetype is our built-in ability to recognize a certain relationship, that of our mother. Jung says that this is rather abstract and we are likely to project the archetype out into the world and onto a particular person, usually our own mothers. Unsurprisingly, there's also a father archetype, which is often symbolized as a guide and a figure of authority. A part of our persona is the role of male or female that we all must play. For most people, that role is determined by their physical gender. But Jung, like Freud and others of the time, felt that we are all really bisexual in nature. When we begin our lives as fetuses, we have undifferentiated sex organs that only gradually, under the influence of hormones, become male or female. Likewise, when we begin our social lives as infants, we are neither male nor female in the social sense. Almost immediately, as soon as those pink or blue booties go on, we come under the influence of society, which gradually molds us into men and women. For example, women are usually expected to be more nurtured and less aggressive, and men are expected to be stronger and ignore the emotional side of life. But Jung felt these expectations meant that we had developed only half of our potential, and so to explain this phenomenon, Jung created the archetypes of the anima and the animus. The anima is the female aspect present in the collective unconscious of men. The animus is the male aspect present in the collective unconscious of women. One of these would quickly be suppressed at birth and during childhood, leading people to become more in touch with their masculine or feminine side. Many archetypes can be seen in the parallel myths, fairy tales, and stories told throughout history, spread throughout the world and in different cultures who would have no other way to have similar stories than besides through a collective unconscious. The main character of these stories is nearly always a hero. He is the doer of good and the defeater of evil. In short, he represents the individual's ego, as we usually identify with his and his actions. The maiden, or princess of sorts, is the majority of the time rescued by the hero, and represents purity, innocence, and usually naivete. The hero is usually guided by the wise old man. He reveals to the hero knowledge, advice, wisdom, and in turn the nature of the collective unconsciousness. What kind of adventure would this be without a trickster? The trickster is commonly represented by a clown or magician, whose role is to hamper the hero's progress and to generally just make trouble. Last in our archetypal storyline, we will encounter the arch enemy of the hero, the shadow. The shadow represents sex and our life instincts as humans. It is derived from our pre-conscious selves and our animalistic past and our only thoughts of reproduction and survival. It is important to note that the shadow is not necessarily inherently evil in and of itself, just as the hero is not necessarily inherently good. However, over time, the hero has come to represent the part of our ego in which we see the good qualities and virtues that we want, and the shadow has come to represent the side of our ego where the evil that we are capable of is stored. Like I said before though, the shadow is actually amoral, neither good nor bad. An excellent example of this is seen in animals. They are capable of tender care for their young, but also viciously killing for food. It doesn't choose to do either per se, rather it has a sort of innocence and it just does what it has to. However, from our perspective, the animal seems to be rather brutal and inhuman, giving the shadow a reputation of a garbage can for all the parts of ourselves that we can't quite admit to and don't want to associate with. Even though Jung spent most of his career proving how we were all interconnected through our collective unconscious, he then proceeded to create a system of describing everyone's individual personalities and egos. He began with two classifications: introverts, people who preferred their internal world of thoughts, feelings, fantasies, and dreams, and needed privacy and space, and extroverts, people who preferred the external world of people and activities, in fact even needed socialization, and instead of privacy and space, they often chose people as a source of energy. However, in this day and age, the words have become confused with ideas like shyness and sociability, partially because introverts tend to be shy and extroverts tend to be sociable, but Jung intended for them to refer more to whether you are more faced toward the persona and outer reality for extrovert, or toward the collective unconscious and its archetypes. In that sense, the introvert is somewhat more mature than the extrovert. And Jung always warned that we all tend to value our own type most. Eventually, Jung went on to add 4 more types of personality. 1. Intuitive. Intuitive people see many possibilities in situations and go with hunches, impatient with early details, impractical, sometimes not present. It is irrational or perceptional, like sensing, but it comes from the actual complex integration of large amounts of information rather than just the mere observation and taking in of it. 2. Thinking. People seen as logical, able to see cause and effect relations, frank, questioning, and rational. Jung says they are better at decision-making and judging rather than the simple intake of information. 3. Sensing. They are described as sensory, shocking, oriented toward the body and senses, again, observant, detailed, present, and known for getting information by means of the senses. Surprise. A sensing person is good at looking and listening, and generally getting to know the world. Jung called this one of the irrational functions, meaning that it involves perception rather than the judging of the actual information. 4. Feeling. These type of people are commonly thought of as creative, warm, intimate, a sense of valuing positive and negatively. Feeling, like thinking, is a matter of evaluating information, this time by weighing one's overall emotional response rather than the mere knowledge. Remember that hair follicle metaphor I used earlier? This now has not only a literal definition of a hair follicle to you, but now has the symbolic meaning of Jung's idea of the collective unconscious to you. However, this, according to Jung, is not a true symbol. Its meaning has been consciously given to it and is consciously understood, rather than unconsciously declared and created in dreams in the collective unconscious as archetypes. Hey guys, just finished a personality test, and it turns out that I'm an ISTJ. That means, according to this source, that I do what should be done. And what I think should be done right now is end the video. Thanks for watching. Bye.